If he's writing, he'll put it in bold letters or something. When a Jew wants to emphasize something, he practices what we call his Hebrew parallelism. He'll say something and then say it again. For example, Isaiah says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord high and lifted up, and His train filled the temple, and above Him stood the seraph, each one having 6 wings. With 2 they covered their face, with 2 they covered their feet, with 2 they did fly, and one cried unto the other, Holy, holy, holy. Notice it doesn't say nice, nice, nice. Notice it doesn't say merciful, merciful, merciful. Notice that it doesn't even say love, love, love. It says holy, holy, holy. Wise theologians know what that means. The first thing you need to know about God, the supreme thing you need to know about God, is He's holy. Amazing. I was preaching a meeting a while back. This was several years ago, actually. And I preached just one night on the holiness of God. Just the holiness of God. And a group of men came up to me afterwards and go, Mr. Washer, we got a problem with you. It's okay. What's the problem? You preached on the holiness of God, and not once tonight did you mention the love of God. I said, I got a problem with you 3 men. Last night I preached on the love of God, and not once did I mention the holiness of God, and none of you had a problem with it. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord. So what he's saying here is this. Not every person who claims to be my disciple and emphatically declares me to be Lord will enter into the kingdom of heaven. John MacArthur says this. Do you want to know what your confession of faith in Jesus Christ is worth? Absolutely nothing. Because here we have people emphatically confessing Jesus to be Lord. And he says this. Not everyone who tells me that will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Then what is the sign or the mark of a person who is actually Christian, saved, and going to heaven? He says this, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter in the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Now look at that. Will enter. Now notice, he does not say that we are saved by doing the will of the Father. That would be works salvation. We are saved only by faith in Jesus Christ. But the evidence that we have truly believed and that we have truly been regenerated and that we are truly Christian is that our life changes because our nature is changed, and it must produce real changes in our lifestyle. And the lifestyle of a true Christian is they are concerned about what the will of God is, and they seek to obey that will. And when they do not follow that will, the Holy Spirit convicts them of their sin, and they are broken over it, and they confess it, and they start all over again. But most people who've prayed that prayer and asked Jesus Christ to come into their heart, they don't even know when they're sinning. I want you to know, if you're a Christian here, maybe you're thinking to yourself, I stumble, I do this, I do that, I want to be for Christ and I struggle to be with Him, but man, is He talking about me? Listen. First of all, the question is it true what you say? In your heart, is it not just a vain thing you say, but is it evident that you desire to be like Christ and you want to do His will and know it? Well, then your struggling over sin may be the great evidence that you are born again. That God is doing a work of sanctification. Remember, the evidence that you're a Christian is not that you're sinless. It's that when you sin, you are broken over your sin. It breaks you into a million pieces. But God's comfort, grace comes and picks you up and sets you back on the path again and encourages you to go on. Sometimes you get up in the morning and you don't want to read the Word. Just like sometimes my heart is dull. But when we go through the day, we feel so convicted about what we've done, and we realize I've got to get into the Word. I need prayer. I need help. I need to grow. That is sign of Christianity. But for many in our churches today, they can go throughout the entire week and never crack a Bible, and it doesn't bother them a bit. They can never pray, and it doesn't bother them a bit. They've never mourned over their sin, and it doesn't bother them a bit. They can look like the world, act like the world, dress like the world, talk like the world, love what the world loves, try to imitate the world and everything, but bless God, they're saved because their preacher told them so, because one time in their life they prayed that little prayer. Oh my gosh, how we ought to be afraid. And then what he says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? You know what's amazing? I'll talk to people who bear no fruit in their life but claim to be Christians. I say, well, start talking to them, I'll press the point with them, and then they'll go, well, I know I'm saved. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If you were before the Lord right now and He asked you, why should I let you into heaven? What would you say? You'd be surprised how their answer begins to be mixed with works. Well, you know, I believe in Jesus. I'm trying to do good. You know, I go to church. I want to read my Bible. Listen to me. Just listen to me for a second. The argument this person's putting forward demonstrates they're lost. If a true Christian were to stand before the Lord, a true Christian, and the Lord made a mistake, which is not going to happen, but if He did make a mistake and said, depart from me, I never knew you. The Christian, the true Christian, would not stand there and go, but Lord, I preached, I did miracles, I cast out demons in your name. I mean, I was a good guy, I went to church, I was more moral than the guys I worked with down at the factory. A true Christian, if he was going to put forth any argument, would say this, but Lord, I know that I was born in sin, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Lord, I know that I have broken every command, and I have no virtue or merit of my own. But Lord, I trusted in the blood you shed on Calvary. That was my only hope. But you don't see that here. When they're finally pressed as to why they ought to be in heaven, they're saying, because we have virtue and merit. And most people who've prayed that little prayer, yet live just like the world, out in the world, even though they claim to be Christian, when you start pressing them, eventually they'll start saying, no, hold it. Now, I'm a good guy. Stop judging me. Instead of, but Christ is precious to me. Is Christ precious to you? Don't tell me just yes. Really. You ever see a guy that treats his wife really bad, doesn't think about her, goes hunting, fishing, leaves her alone, locks her in a closet, whatever, just ignores his wife, basically, and everyone else around the town looks at him and goes, man, that guy doesn't love his wife at all. Would someone listen to your conversations that you have over a week period? Listen to what you look at, the books you read, your time in the Word, your time seeking Christ. Would they look at you and go, man, that guy has a passion for Christ. Christ is precious to him. You see, Christ is not. One of the worst things that happens when a person is born again in a country where there's no persecution, it's difficult. Why? You're born again in a country where they kill Christians, Jesus becomes everything. He's everything. You're isolated from society. You have nothing. Everyone hates your guts. They want you to die. The only thing you have is Christ. And also, the fellowship of other believers is precious. I remember during the war in Peru, bombs blowing up everywhere, people being killed like crazy. They blow out the windows of our church with a bomb, machine gun fire, everything else. You should have seen that fellowship. Everyone was so poor we'd wait in lines to get rice. Wait for 3-4 hours to buy a bag of rice. No one had anything. And so, man, getting to church on Wednesday, you'd do anything to get there. Prosperity, regardless of what all these preachers say, prosperity is one of the greatest dangers to Christianity. He goes on and he says this. Verse 23. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Now I want you to understand a few things. First of all, let's go back to the beginning. When Jesus said, the gate is small and the way is narrow, and few are those who find it. Now let me give you the proper interpretation of this in its context. Most of us think, well, what Jesus is talking about is here's all the world over here, the atheists and the agnostics and the movie stars and all the people that hate